Hey, what's up, guys? So we're covering Beserker, aka Ursula. So let's get right into it. Obviously, I do have Beserker at blue, so this is going to be a little bit warped. But now, having that said, you can see that Grizzly Smash throws a powerful punch, dealing damage to all enemies in a medium area, knocking you back. So it does about 1,700 physical damage. Your scene Wrath throws her shield at a target, damaging nearby enemies in a small area, increases Ursula's magic defense by 8 seconds. So again, she's one of the few tanks that'll essentially great for basically countering a magic team. Arctic Roar, the Berserker lets out a battle cry, motivating all her allies, and increases STR. So essentially, your physical base teams are going to get a huge bonus because of Berserker. Of course, there is an ability called Glacier Geyser, which it's actually pretty similar to kind of like Snow Queen's ability, with the exception that it's a cone-based attack, because it basically smashes the ground, causing icicles to burst forth, dealing mid-range damage to all enemies in a line. So it's pretty similar to like Snow Queen's ability, but it only lasts for 2 seconds, so it's not as long. There is about 1,700 physical damage caused by that, and there's an additional 1,000 when they come out. So it's not a ton of damage really with that Glacier Geyser ability. If we look at her battle skills, obviously this is just like any other pay-to-play hero. So you've got basically 3 types of attack stats that you're basically bonusing for your army. So she's a great military hero, and for that reason, a lot of people pick her up. She does have infantry, so I mean now you kind of get an idea of her. So the basic attributes is she basically has 957 strength, which is pretty, to be expected with a tank. She has 370 dexterity and 323 intelligence. I'll make your blood run cold. For millennia, a primitive tribe of warriors has jealously guarded the frozen peaks, suffering none to pass. In the blistering cold and sharp crags, there is no room for weakness and charity, and the sickly Ursula was not expected to survive past childhood. But Ursula stubbornly kept going, year after year, putting all of her time and effort into strengthening her body and sharpening her skills. At her coming age of ceremony, she proved herself by being the first in 2 centuries to claim a bear for a kill. The name of the Berserker is now feared in all of the lands that fall under the shadow of the peaks.
Hey, what's up, guys? So, we're basically going to be talking about Beserker, and essentially, right, Beserker is kind of like one of those few heroes in the game where essentially she serves as both a tank, but also she is not really a tank. Now, to explain why, right, you'll see here in just a few seconds, but essentially what she does is she will stun targets out in front of her with a little ice jolt. Okay, so essentially she knocks them up forward, which basically stuns them for like a brief second. It's barely noticeable at first, but essentially she is going to stop the initial blunt attack or MP that the very frontal targets will usually take. Now, why this is important is essentially that means is that, if you're wanting to like, for example, a Child of Light or even Death Knight or any of those heroes for that matter, that basically need MP to be able to charge up, to stop them in their tracks, Berserker is like by far the best token you can have. Now, by slowing this down really slowly, when you see her ultimate, you'll actually notice that when she goes up, she'll jump up, just like any other, ultimate, there's always something fancy with it, right? But of course, you'll see that when she does it, she does about 1,300 and then another 1,000. But essentially, she does a row, just like Snow Queen in a lot of ways, where she basically does a row of ice, only getting the targets out in front of her. Now, that is kind of, useful to see, because obviously, just by reading it, obviously, is one thing, but to actually see it, I think is really, it's more worthwhile to really see what exactly these heroes are doing. Especially when you can look at them and you can actually see really up close exactly what they're doing. And I mean, in the case of Berserker, if you want to leverage her as well as you want, you got to make sure that she stays alive. So that means if she's the main tank, remember, her defense isn't exactly fantastic, okay? So she's not really made to absorb damage. She's great to pair up with another tank or to have like a mid-healer like C-Squire in tandem with her. But if you intend to keep her alive long enough, you're going to have to be very, very, very tactical about how you're going to use her. Now, obviously, the one problem that you're often going to find with Berserkers is that it does take time to charge that ability. And you'll see that, even though you put all that time and effort into trying to keep her alive, it may not even be worthwhile if you wind up losing a hero or two beside her. So it is incredibly important that when you are in the Colosseum, that you want to try and focus on that MP increase as much as possible. So, and here there are a few heroes in the game that you might want to have in tandem with her, like Wesley, which will increase recovery, and then maybe even a Snow Queen to increase the MP regeneration, because that's essentially going to make it that much easier. But you can see that even without slowing this down, you can see how quick that goes. It's really, really quick. I mean, that's part of the reason why I slowed it down there for you guys, is because if you don't really see it, it's hard to tell unless you slow it down. But I mean, as you can tell, there's just a lot going on, and there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, obviously. But I mean, the thing about Beserker is if you use her properly, okay, the beauty of using Beserker is that if you want to stop like your physical based teams, teams that use a lot of Dex heroes, or maybe they're solely using tanks, that is kind of where you can leverage using Beserker, because essentially she's going to stop that initial blunt that they're all trying to get. They're all trying to get that initial hit off you so that they can get the MP needed to use their ultimates. And that's especially true with like Death Knight and Child of Light in particular, because they both are, well, essentially tanks, and they depend on that MP to ultimate. And so if you can even slightly, and I say that slightly affect that's ultimately going to get you ahead really, really quickly. Now, the only thing about it is obviously where you're able to stop that even for a second. There are some things that I've used in here in this particular team to help me out, which is to use another stunner like Petite Devil so that I can stun them for even longer, and let that Dex hero of mine, aka Prince of Thieves, to increase that amount of damage that I'm doing. Now, Prince of Thieves is also kind of like a backup, because essentially Child of Light will pop a bubble, and he is my bubble popper. Because the one thing that is awesome about Prince of Thieves is he pops bubbles. And yeah, well, I don't know. I don't even know why I'm saying that. But the point is, okay, when it comes to using Beserker, alright, the only clear takeaways is to just make sure that you use her in pairs with either a tank or multiple healers. If you do keep her alive for just a short while, just know that well, at that point, you're using her just to stop the tanks in front of you or the Dex heroes, and that's the only thing I've ever seen her used for the most part. I hope you guys are at least finding this information somewhat useful, but let's actually take a look at the stats, and we'll actually take a little more of an in-depth look at it. So, well, why don't we?
And obviously, when you look at her stats, obviously 24,000 HP is about right where you would see Shane at in HP. Obviously, the recovery around is not bad, but it's not as great. You can see her magic defense is pretty decent, and defense is okay. It's not super great, but it's a little bit better than Shane's. So again, I would say Ursula is kind of like the Shane of your existence. She essentially is the magic defense counter for a tank. But as you can tell, her attack's okay, and everything else kind of matches up. But that's pretty much it for Ursula. I hope you guys found this video to be somewhat helpful. And of course, if you're learning more and more about these heroes and these videos are helping you, please share them, let other people know, so that they can kind of begin to understand the Colosseum better. Because by knowing your heroes, you will ultimately know how to counter different teams. Needless to say, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.